Hey everyone. If you know my channel or if you just scroll through my videos, you'd know that I'm a big fan of the game Super Auto Pets. What you might not know, however, is that I'm also just as big as a fan of the Pokémon franchise. Now, recently this got me thinking, what would the pets from Super Auto Pets look like if they were Pokémon? What kind of types, stats, abilities, and moveset would they have? Of course, doing an entire Pokédex worth of Pokémon would be way too much work for just a concept, so I settled on creating 3 pets as Pokémon, all with 2 evolutions each. The idea is that in a theoretical ROM hack, these pets would be your starters. In this video, I want to show off these creations and, in a sense, pitch this concept to the world. However, before I can show ideas, I want to take you through the 5 rules that ensure these pets feel like sap pets made into Pokemon, as opposed to just some Pokemon with sap sprites. Rule number 1. The maximum allowed base stat total, BST, are to be determined relative to the tier the pets are in sap. This is calculated as tier times 100 plus 100. For example, tier 1 pets cannot have a BST over 1 times 100 plus 100 equals 200. So for those who don't know, Pokemon strengths are determined through their stats. The base stat total is just all the stats added up. In a moment I will briefly describe how stats work in Pokemon, but for now it's just important to know that this number is, broadly speaking, the determiner of how strong a Pokemon is capable of being. Lucky for us, SAP also has a way to determine the strength of a pet, this being the tier. Just like how in Pokemon, highly evolved and strong BST Mons are typically only attained later in the game, the tier of a pet determines how early or late it can be found in SAP. So to add continuity between the 2 games, I've decided to make the BST of the Pokepets be determined based on its tier in SAP. While I originally wanted to make it so that the tier would be a 1 to 100 ratio for simplicity, I quickly realized just how weak that would make tier 1 Pokepets. To explain, the lowest BST Pokemon tended to range just under 200, so if my weakest weren't even allowed to go over 100, it would make them simply way too bad. Therefore, I decided to make all Pokepets allowed to have their SAP tier times 100 plus 100 extra stats as a maximum. This means that tier 1 pets are now allowed to have a max of 200 BST, while tier 6 pets don't all have to be stuck with a max of just 600. Rule 2. Just because all tier 6 Pokepets are allowed to have over 600 BST does not mean that they should. The majority of pets, no matter the tier, should follow similar BST and stat distributions as real Pokemon. As you'll see later on, this rule was pretty hard to follow when making the starter Pokepets. However, I will excuse it, as it's okay for starter pets to have a high BST for their tier. After all, they should feel stronger than your average Pokepet. However, this rule is still an important reminder that a tier doesn't necessarily determine the strength of any given Pokepet. Rule 3. The stat distribution should be consistent with the stats of the pet. So if a pet has more health than attack, then it should have more defensive stats than offensive stats, and vice versa. This rule is in rare cases allowed to be broken, where a pet's stats don't fit their intended purpose, but it's still for multiple possible reasons the best fit. I honestly didn't meticulously follow this rule, so cut me some slack if you find that a Pokepet has more defensive stats despite having a higher attack than health in Super Auto Pets. However, that's not to say I didn't follow this rule at all. This is because I did find it important for SAP players to immediately understand just how powerful a Pokepet is in this concept of a ROM hack, just by already having a feel for strength in SAP. This is not to say that they are 1-to-1 in strength, but that the core concept of a Pokepet is broadly similar to that of its SAP pet counterpart. Rule 4. Legendary pets or other special pets with over 600 BST are to be mostly taken from Unicorn Pack. Honestly, this is just because I think it's a lot cooler if mythical pets are legendary Pokepets. The reasoning for that kind of speaks for itself if you're all familiar with Pokemon. Rule 5. Abilities should mirror or be inspired by either the pet's ability in SAP or the real animal, with the former being more important. Another way of keeping the tie between SAP pets and Pokepets is the fact that both Pokemon and SAP pets have abilities. So this is very obviously a great way of making the Pokepet feel more like the pet. The big problem here, of course, is that no Pokemon ability is directly the same as a SAP ability. So some creative liberties will have to be taken with what abilities a Pokepet gets. In this process, I will sometimes choose an ability that ties in with the real life animal either because it's cool or because there's no good ways of fitting the pet's ability with the Pokemon ability. With these rules now fully explained, I want to quickly describe how stats work in Pokemon, and thereafter I will introduce you to my concept for how the starter Pokemon could look like if they were pets from Super Auto Pets. The HP stat is directly the health total of the Pokemon. The attack stat acts as a modifier in determining how much damage a Pokemon can deal. The defense stat is compared up against the attack stat, so that if the attack stat is higher, then the damage will be multiplied by a number higher than 1. And if the defense stat is higher, then the damage will be multiplied by a number less than 1. The special attack and special defense stats work in the same way, but only come into effect when a move that is categorized as special is used. Finally, the speed stat determines who will move first. Just as a side note for clarity, I count HP, defense, and special defense as defensive stats, and attack, special attack, and speed as offensive stats. Now, with that out of the way, here are the Pokepet starters. Number 001, Gecko. Gecko is the grass type starter. In SAP, it is a free attack 1 health tier 1 pet with the ability to gain health at the start of battle. So for the Gecko Pokepet, I have given it the max allowed BST of 200 since it is a starter. The defensive stats are distributed as 40 HP, 30 defense, and 23 special defense, so as to represent the low initial health of the Gecko. The offensive stats are 47 attack, 20 special attack, and 40 speed. This reflects how geckos tend to be quick, yet fragile. To mirror the SAP ability of gaining health at the start of battle, I've given the Gecko the multi-scale ability. This makes it so that most attacks only deal half damage to the Gecko if it is on full HP. My hope is that this would serve as a strong yet fragile team member. Number 002, Iguana. Unlike its pre-evolution, Iguana is meant as a growing pains type phase, where it becomes much more bulky but loses its attacking prowess. In SAP, the Iguana is a 2 attack 4 health tier 2 pet, with the ability to damage any summoned or pushed enemy pets. While the SAP ability isn't really reflected much in the Pokepet Iguana, the attack and health is the main way to connect the two digital animals. Upon evolution from Gecko to Iguana, the Iguana's BST grows to the maxed out 300. Its defensive stats goes from 40 to 65 HP, 30 to 67 defense, and 23 to 57 special defense. This huge increase in defensive stats is, however, balanced by its offensive stats going from 47 to 50 attack, 20 to 24 special attack, and 40 to 37 speed. This very slight increase in attack stats, as well as a slight loss in speed, makes the Iguana a very suboptimal Pokepet. The reason for this is because I want to make the middle stage suffering worth the effort by rewarding the player with a very strong final evolution. Number 003, Crocodile. Crocodile is the final evolution of the grass starter line. In SAP, the Crocodile is a 8 attack 4 health tier 5 pet with the ability to damage the opponent's backline pets at the start of battle. As a Pokepet, the Crocodile gains a BST of 528. On top of just getting more stats, it's also rewarded with the ever-strong water type. As well as that, the stats are min-maxed to favor the strong offensive capability of crocodiles. The defensive stats go from 65 to 80 HP, 67 to 73 defense, and 57 to 67 special defense. Whereas the offensive stats goes from 50 to 135 attack, 24 to 73 special attack, and 37 to 100 speed. Remember that the lower bulk of the Croc is helped a ton by its multi-scale ability. While given the final evolution of the grass starter a water typing might be a little odd, I personally like the idea of the Croc being the ultimate lizard that has learned both to use the vegetation around it to hide like normal, as well as mastering the water. The green color and high sap tier also made me like this concept. By the way, if you think any of the sprites I'm using here are a little wonky looking, that's because I drew them all by myself without tracing, so my very poor artistic talent is likely going to be shining through here. Anyways, on to the next starter line. Number 004, Duck. The Duck is a classic sap pet, and makes, in my opinion, a great option for the first evolution water type starter. In SAP, the Duck is a 2 attack, 2 health tier 1 pet, which gives all shop pets health when it's sold. As a Pokepet, Duck has a maxed out BST of 200, and has the ability Competitive. This ability makes it so that the Duck will increase its special attack by 2 stages whenever any of its stats are lowered in battle, except for when it lowers its own stats. With this ability, it is clear that the Duck is built around being a special attacker. Its SAP ability will also be reflected in its high health stat. Duck's defensive stats are 50 HP, 29 defense, and 32 special defense. Its offensive stats are 15 attack, 41 special attack, and 33 speed. Number 005, Platypus. Platypus continues on with the same concept. In SAP, it's a 2 attack, 2 health tier 4 pet with the ability to summon a duck and a beaver when it faints or is sold. This ability is what inspired me to have it be the evolution of duck. As a Poképet, Platypus has a BST of 334. Remember that it being a tier 4 allows it to have a maximum of 500 BST, however that doesn't mean it should, especially as a second stage evolution. Its defensive stats goes from 50 to 87 HP, 29 to 53 defense, and 32 to 50 special defense. Its offensive stats goes from 15 to 28 attack, 41 to 70 special attack, and 33 to 46 speed. Number 006, Ostrich. Ostrich is the final evolution of the water type starter line and combines the birdliness of the duck with the land dwellingness of the platypus. Yeah, in retrospect, it's a bit hard to justify the water typing for this one, but just ignore that and focus on the cool new fighting type added to this final stage evolution. In SAP, the Ostrich is a 6 attack, 7 health tier 6 pet with the ability to give all pets permanent health in the shop phase. Or maybe it will have its ability changed by the time this comes out, I don't know. The point is that right now the Ostrich pet is very health focused. Therefore, I've taken that heavily into consideration when deciding its stats. As a Poképet, Ostrich has a BST of 539. Its defensive stats goes from 87 to 116 HP, 53 to 81 defense, and 50 to 85 special defense. Its offensive stats goes from 28 to 61 attack, 70 to 92 special attack, and 46 to 104 speed. Compared to the crocodile, the ostrich's 92 special attack might seem lackluster, especially with a special attack focused fighting type. However, do remember that its ability should help it considerably when it comes to increasing that poor special attack stat. As well as that, its mighty high 104 speed should help it take care of most threats before the opponent can even fight back. Number 007, Salamander. Salamander is the fire type starter Poképet. In SAP, it's a 1 attack, 2 health tier 2 pet, which gains attack and health stats on the start of battle if you have cell pets on your team. As a Poképet, it has a BST of 230, beating out the other starters who were forced to have a max of 200. Salamander has the ability Drought, which sets up harsh sunlight weather effect upon switching into battle. This weather effect mainly synergizes with the Salamander by buffing all fire-type moves by 50% and debuffing all water-type moves by 50%. However, it also grants a wide list of other situational benefits if your team is correctly built around it. To make up for the very strong ability as well as a higher BST, I've decided to keep the min-maxing of the Salamander stats as light as possible. Its defensive stats are 42 HP, 51 defense, and 42 special defense. Its offensive stats are 29 attack, 36 special attack, and 30 speed. Number 008, Leaf Gecko. Despite being called a leaf gecko, the design of this pet was so fire looking that I wanted to make it part of this evolutionary line. This, as well as that it's a tier 4 pet in SAP, which of course allows for an on par BST. In SAP, the leaf gecko is a 4 attack, 4 health pet with the ability to debuff the opponent's team with ailments, as well as give your own pets ailments, which can actually be beneficial with the right team. This means that there's a nice overlap with how harsh sunlight can both buff or debuff yourself or the opponent, depending on when and how it's used. As a Poképet, the leaf gecko has a BST of 355. Its defensive stats goes from 42 to 67 HP, 51 to 64 defense, and 42 to 61 special defense. Its offensive stats goes from 29 to 38 attack, 36 to 50 special attack, and 30 to 40 speed. The high bulk of the stage is to prevent it from being overpowered compared to the other 2 mid-stage evolutions, as well as to set up for its final stage evolution. Number 009, Triceratops. Triceratops is the final evolution of the Firestarter Poképet line. It gains the ground type as well as a BST of 530. In SAP, Trike is a 5 attack, 6 health tier 5 pet with the ability to stat up your team every time it takes damage. To reflect the support and bulk type playstyle it has in SAP, as a Poképet, the Trike is built for defense and support. Its defensive stats goes from 67 to 101 HP, 64 to 105 defense, and 61 to 105 special defense. Its offensive stats goes from 38 to 43 attack, 50 to 88 special attack, and 40 to 88 speed. While this makes it slower and less strong than the alternatives, with being able to set up harsh sunlight, it can play a huge role in both supporting your team and hitting hard with its buffed fire type moves. So, this is my concept for if sap pets were Pokemon. I am very grateful that you were willing to watch through this whole video, as it has been a surprisingly large and time-consuming endeavor. If you have any suggestions on improvement to the Pokepet concept, I'd be happy to hear it down in the comment section. I don't expect anything to come from this video, but who knows? Maybe someone will be inspired. In any case, that's been all for me for now. Have a good rest of your day, and goodbye! Bye 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 bye!